The rain had just begun to fall when Marianne Alcott arrived in Bath. Her carriage stopped in front of a small Georgian townhouse, its stone facade darkened by years of weather. This was the house left to her by Aunt Margaret, a woman she had only known through rare letters and distant childhood memories. With a heavy heart, Marianne stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and lavender, as though the rooms had been untouched for decades. Curtains hung thick and heavy, muffling the sound of the rain outside. The place felt frozen, preserved in time, waiting for someone to disturb its silence. On the mantelpiece in the parlor stood a large canvas. The frame was gilded but tarnished, and in its center was the image of a woman dressed in black Victorian silk. Her face was pale, her expression stern, her eyes dark and deep as if they belonged to someone who had endured centuries of sorrow. Marianne could not look away. Something about the woman unsettled her, yet she felt an odd pull, as though the painting itself demanded to be acknowledged. She reached out to touch the frame, but a cold shiver ran down her spine and she quickly withdrew her hand. She turned away, but as she crossed the parlor to inspect the rest of the house, the uncanny sensation lingered, that she was being watched. At first she told herself it was nerves, the exhaustion of travel, the melancholy of loss. But when she glanced back, her breath caught in her throat. The painted woman's eyes, which had surely been staring forward only moments before, seemed now to follow her across the room. Marianne woke before dawn, restless and uneasy. The house seemed to hold its breath, every sound magnified, the creak of the floorboards, the sigh of the wind against the shutters, the faint drip of rain from the eaves. She had dreamt of the portrait all night, though she could not recall the details, only the sense of being observed. Drawn by a quiet dread, she descended the staircase into the parlor. The fire had long gone out, yet the room still carried the chill of the previous night. Her gaze was pulled to the mantelpiece at once. The woman in the portrait was different again. No longer stern, no longer smiling. Now her lips were pressed into a faint curve, something between a smirk and a secret. Marianne's pulse quickened. She backed away, whispering to herself that her imagination was playing tricks in the half-light. She turned sharply as a knock sounded at the door. Heart racing, she hurried to open it. Standing there was an elderly neighbor, a stooped woman wrapped in a heavy shawl. Her eyes, pale as smoke, scanned Marianne's face with a knowing look. "You are Margaret Alcott's niece, are you not?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Then listen to me carefully, child. Do not linger before that portrait. Do not let it draw you in." Marianne tried to question her, but the old woman shook her head and shuffled away, leaving only the echo of her warning. Marianne stood frozen, clutching the doorframe, the words heavy in her ears. When she finally closed the door and turned back, her blood ran cold. In the flickering morning light, the painted woman's eyes had shifted. They were no longer gazing into the distance. They were fixed directly on Marianne. The following night, Marianne sat in the parlor with only a single lamp burning. She had tried to avoid the painting during the day, busying herself with sorting through Aunt Margaret's letters and belongings, but the silence of the house seemed to circle her back to the mantelpiece. The portrait demanded attention, like an unspoken presence waiting to be acknowledged. As the wind rattled against the window panes, she heard it. At first it was faint, a murmur beneath the creaks of the old house. She froze, holding her breath. The sound came again, soft, like a whisper drifting from the canvas itself. Marianne stepped closer, her hands trembling. "Who's there?" she whispered into the empty room. The answer was no more than a breath, a sigh carried through the painted lips. Though she could not make out the words, the tone was unmistakable, it was pleading. She stumbled back, knocking over the lamp. Its light swung wildly before steadying again, throwing distorted shadows across the parlor. Marianne's heart pounded as her eyes fixed on the portrait. The woman's expression had shifted once more. Her lips were parted, as though she had been caught mid-sentence. Desperate for proof that she was not losing her mind, Marianne searched the frame. Running her fingers along the back, she felt something metallic, hidden against the wood. With a sharp tug, she pulled free a small, rusted key, dangling from a faded ribbon. Her pulse raced. She had no idea what it opened, only that her aunt had left it there deliberately. The small key weighed heavily in Marianne's pocket all the next day. She tried to ignore it, but her fingers kept brushing against the cold metal as though it demanded her attention. She searched every drawer, every cupboard in the house, but none seemed to match the key's delicate shape. By late afternoon, she climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. The air grew colder as she reached the top, thick with the scent of moth-eaten cloth and old wood. Cobwebs hung in the corners, untouched for years. In the far wall, half hidden behind an old trunk, she saw it, a door no larger than a cupboard, its lock small and ancient. Her breath quickened. The key slid perfectly into place. With a soft click, the door creaked open. Inside was a narrow chamber, no bigger than a closet. Dust motes floated in the slanted light from a tiny window. Against the walls leaned several canvases, each covered in sheets of yellowed linen. Marianne pulled one free and let the cloth fall. Her heart stopped. It was the same woman. The same pale face, the same dark eyes. But in this portrait she was younger, perhaps no more than 17, dressed in white lace instead of black silk. One by one, Marianne uncovered the others. In each painting, the woman appeared at different stages of life: girlhood, young bride, widow. The same face, repeating, always staring. But the last canvas was worse. Its paint was fresher, the strokes unmistakably recent. And at the bottom, in the corner, was a signature written in trembling ink. Marianne's own name. Marianne spun around, her heart hammering. The attic was dim, shadows stretching long across the beams. At first she saw nothing. Then, from the corner of the locked room, something stirred. A stack of cloth shifted and fell to the floor, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Her breath came fast, her throat dry. She whispered into the darkness, "Who is there?" There was no answer, only the groan of the old house settling. But when she looked back at the uncovered canvases, her stomach tightened. The faces seemed altered, the eyes more alive, the expressions shifting in ways paint should never allow. She fled the attic, slamming the small door shut behind her. Yet the images stayed burned into her mind. That night, she could not sleep. She lit a candle and searched through Aunt Margaret's old letters, desperate for explanation. One envelope, brittle with age, caught her eye. On the back was a seal marked with the Alcott crest, a raven clutching a rose. Inside was a letter written in her aunt's hand. "My dearest Marianne. If you are reading this, the house is now yours, and so too is the burden I carried. The portraits are not merely paintings. They are vessels. Our family, for generations, has been bound to a curse born of vanity and pride. The first Alcott sought immortality through art. He succeeded, but at a dreadful cost. Each generation, one of us must bear the portrait's gaze, or the curse will claim us all." The candle flickered, and Marianne gripped the paper tightly. Her name, written on the last canvas, no longer felt like coincidence. It was a claim. The whisper froze Marianne in her chair. Her candle sputtered, the flame bending as though disturbed by unseen breath. She turned sharply, holding the letter like a shield, but the room was empty. With shaking hands, she carried the candle across the parlor. Every mirror, every reflective surface seemed suddenly sinister. She pulled a cloth over the mantel mirror, her heart thudding. Yet when she reached the tall glass in the hall, she hesitated. Her reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed. But something was wrong. The figure in the glass did not move as she did. When she raised her hand, the reflection was slower, almost deliberate, as though testing her. Marianne staggered back, her breath ragged. "No, this cannot be real," she whispered. The figure's lips moved in the mirror, though no sound came. Slowly, Carefully, it formed words. Set me free. Marianne felt the weight of the key in her pocket again. Was it meant not only for the attic door, but for something far darker? Her candle flickered and died, plunging the hall into shadow. For an instant, the glass shimmered with a faint glow. And in that glow, the face looking back at her was not her own at all. It was the woman from the portrait. The pale hand pressed harder against the glass, its fingers long and elegant, yet unnervingly cold even through the air. Marianne stumbled backwards, but her eyes could not leave the shifting surface. The woman's face emerged more clearly, as if she were submerged in water. Her lips moved again, but this time the sound came, low, sorrowful, like the echo of a voice trapped for centuries. Free me, and I shall free you. Marianne shook her head, clutching her aunt's letter. What are you? What do you want from me? The reflection tilted its head, and the painted eyes seemed to glisten with living tears. I was the first, the voice whispered. I was promised eternity. Instead, I became the curse. Each heir carries me, each heir binds me. Unless one agrees to take my place. Marianne's heart pounded. The words in the letter echoed in her mind, vessels, burden, generations. You mean, Marianne said with trembling lips, you want me to surrender? The woman's voice cut sharply, cold as steel. Give me your name, your face, your years. And in return, you will never grow old, never fade, never die. The mirror darkened, the hand retreating slightly, waiting. Marianne stood paralyzed between terror and temptation. She thought of her aunt, of the canvases in the attic, of the signature already written in her name. Was the bargain already chosen for her? The hall trembled as though the house itself held its breath. The mirror rippled like water, and two pale hands clawed outward, straining to break through. The voice, no longer a whisper but a command, echoed around Marianne. Choose, child of Alcott. Accept the bargain, or be consumed. Marianne's pulse thundered in her ears. The letter crumpled in her fist. She saw again the faces on the attic canvases, each one bearing the same woman at different ages, each heir tied to her curse. Her aunt had borne it. Now it had come for her. The woman's face pressed closer to the glass, lips curling into a cruel smile. You cannot run. Your name is already written. Marianne stepped forward, her fear giving way to fury. Then hear me, she said, voice shaking but resolute. I will not be your vessel. I will not carry your curse. The reflection snarled, its painted eyes burning. Defy me, and the Alcott line shall wither. Your blood will be the last. Marianne raised the candle holder high and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered with a deafening crack, shards spraying across the floor like falling stars. The woman's scream filled the house, sharp and unearthly, before fading into silence. When the echoes died, the hall was still. The mirror lay broken, its surface lifeless. Yet among the fragments, Marianne saw her own reflection, only her, no other face staring back. But as she turned to leave, she noticed one shard still glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Within it, the painted eyes blinked once.